Hello, welcome to the School of Visual Arts and welcome to our department. Recently changed its name to the Department of Design Research, Writing and Criticism. It's great to have you here. And before we launch in, I actually want to say a few words about design research, the new focus of our one-year MA program, since the last time I'll be seeing you this spring, but also because I'm very excited about it. And the kind of research I just wanted to mention, and I also think it's going to tie in with the topic of tonight's talk very nicely. I specifically wanted to talk to you about active research, by which I mean working with primary sources, in archives, and in the field. The kind of research where you have to go and attend town meetings, visit sites of design's manufacture, use, and disposal, interviewing as many stakeholders as possible. And we've always believed here that that kind of research is the basis of all good writing and criticism, but I'm beginning to see the ways in which it plays a really interesting strategic role in thinking about design more generally. And that's what I'm excited to see sort of roll out from this new manifestation of our program. So our students' research trails lead them to housing projects in Newark, Brazilian favelas, Dansk's founders' farmhouse in Denmark, Detroit, the emerging high fashion studios of Shanghai, repair shops in New York, and tiny houses in Colorado. And it's really the mechanics of this kind of work that we now want to examine more closely. And the hypothesis here is that deep, rigorous, methods-based research can be useful to many other fields, industry sectors and institutions well beyond design criticism. So we've always taught the techniques of reporting and research, but through sort of putting more focus on them, I think, and expanding our offerings in these areas, I think we're going to go down some really interesting pathways. So while critical distance is obviously key and important to any clear-sighted examination of design, I think, and many of the faculty here and students also believe this, that getting up really close to your subject is also just as important, sometimes more important. To go ahead and kick a building, as architecture critic Ada Louise Huxtable put it so well. And kicking a building, as we know, means you have to get very close to it, physically and intellectually. You might pace around its perimeter, see the way the sky is framed by its edges, run your fingers along the grooves and joints, and observe how people go in and out from this building. And it's just the same with a design product. You need to stroke it, weigh it in your hands, and yes, maybe even kick it. You need to ask questions of all the constituents that it collects around it. Consider its site of use, compare its ideal career, the one envisioned by its creators and promoters, with what actually happens when mere mortals misinterpret it, misuse it, and basically bring it to life. So at our open house last week, Anne Keto, one of our second year students who'll be graduating in May, began her presentation with her reflections on these kind of topics and where the critic sits. And according to Anne, it's not up here. A critic and writer, she said, operates best not from a distance or from behind a Skype interface, but as part of the crush. And I really like that characterization. A critic sits not on the balcony, but right down in the mosh pit. And this was Anne's mosh pit, her lodging in the world's newest country, South Sudan. Anne's thesis explores the topic of nation branding and the design of national identity, particularly looking at the symbols, emblems, objects and buildings that signify nationhood. And as part of her research, she spent 7 days in Juba and came back with loads of notes and first-person stories. And during that time, she met Hakim. And he's a graphic artist and project manager at the Juba printing press, who had been charged with the process of kind of shepherding the process of creating a state emblem. As Anne observed, the result was pretty formulaic, a trompe-l'oeil of legitimacy, as she puts it. But the process of its production, with 28 cabinet ministers involved in its art direction, as well as Hakim's immense pride in the contribution he had made to his emerging country, was absolutely fascinating. And of course, you know, these aspects of a design story can only be accessed firsthand. Okay, so that's my spiel. And and you can hear more of these stories and more of these approaches at the conference on May 2nd, where graduating students will be presenting their thesis research. I do encourage you to come along and attend. There's also, if you want to get your own hands dirty in design research, then do sign up for a summer intensive, 2 weeks of behind the scenes of design writing and research here in New York. The deadline, I think, is today, so you better get on it if you were thinking of that. And then, of course, the one-year MA program, lots of details can be found about that on our website right there. Okay. So we unfortunately, this is the very last of our lectures in the spring lecture series, a fabulous array put together by our first year students. They sit down as a group and we curate and put this list together. They host the speakers and put questions to them afterwards, as you will see. And we invite members of the public to give them a kind of testing ground for their work here. So thank you very much for participating in this experiment. And then basically, let's do it. Let's bring up here Justin to introduce tonight's speaker. Justin Zwang.
Hi everyone, my name is Justin. The design magazine is undergoing a revival. Every couple of months, a new title is launched somewhere around the world, adding to the ever-growing stacks of independent magazines at bookstores like McNally Jackson and Printed Matter. One recent addition is Works That Works, a biannual launch over a year ago at The Hague. Unlike many of the new titles, Works That Work is not yet another lifestyle magazine by a designer. Instead of featuring only high design and celebrity creatives, this journal casts an eye on the small works that have a huge impact on our lives. Think of the metal barricade used to control crowds at demonstrations and concerts, or the image of a fly on urinals that helps guys aim better in the restroom. Besides such written stories, there are also photo essays on the Global Seed Vault in Norway and DIY chairs on the streets of China and Hong Kong. Not only is Works That Works rethinking what a design magazine should be, it is also experimenting with how it's distributed. Besides going to a bookstore to get a printed copy, readers can buy digital editions, individual articles, or even buy a copy from another reader. The latest issue is even now available in Spanish, which is believed to be the second most popular language in the world after English. For design writers and critics like us at Decrypt, Works That Work offers a glimpse to the future of design magazines. The questions we should ask are, what should design writers be thinking about? Who should design stories be for? Where should our story ideas be coming from? How can we better distribute our writing? We're most fortunate to have the founder and editor of Works That Work, Peter Biľak, here tonight to give us some answers and insights. Peter has been thinking critically about design for many years now. He previously co-founded critical art and design journal ... As a typographer, he has also written extensively about typefaces and is the founder of Typotheque Type Foundry. He also started the Indian Type Foundry to promote the creation of typefaces for non-Western languages. Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Netherlands with his luggage of magazines, please give a warm welcome to Peter Biľak.
Good evening. Hello. All right. I'll be speaking about magazines in general and about this magazine in particular. If you look at the average kiosk, average newsstand, you'll see that there are surprising similarities, there's surprising uniformity in how magazines look like. And there are many reasons for this. And the biggest reason, I think, why most of magazines look alike is the simple reasons why they are funded. I need to speak up. Okay. If you look at them, this is a report from the Halls magazine report that on average, magazines include 54% advertising. Right. This may be slightly annoying for the readers, because of course you get most of the advertising in a publication, and there's less content and more advertising. But beyond this, of course, the bigger question is who is the magazine made for? Is it really made for the advertisers, or is it made for the readers? And if predominantly the financing and the revenue comes from advertising, of course the editorial questions can be, or the editorial focus is made to please the advertisers mainly. I'll go all the way back. This fellow may be familiar. He's coming from New York. Benjamin Day, in 1833, he founded New York Sun, and it's an important daily because before 1833. Most of publications, most of magazines, most of newspapers was made for the readers only. It was distributed on subscription base, and people would pay for the direct delivery of the publication. What Benjamin Day did is that he would rethink the financing of a periodical. Instead of the average price of a newspaper at the time would be about 6 to 10 cents, he would slash the price tenfold. He would offer it for 1 cent, and he would make the difference by funding it via advertising of all kinds. And this model became hugely successful, widely successful. So it's been copied but 10 years later, most of magazines, most publications would be following the same model. In fact, this became the dominant model in publishing today. Model rooted in 19th century became the only model for the mainstream publications. I'll make a huge step. At the day we announced launch or inception of this publication, this was on the news. This is from clipping from the New York Times site. And it announces that Newsweek, the famous weekly, which has been in print for almost 70 years, well, 80 years, it was quitting print. What was really surprising, was that at the time when this last printed issue came out, at that point, Newsweek had 1.5 million paying subscribers, which shows that there's something broken. If you have 1.5 million paying subscribers, you expect it to do okay. Yet, no, it was not a viable model. It could not survive. It could not survive because the readers, who paid for the magazine, they're paying 28 cents per copy, which is less than shipping cost of a magazine. All the revenue for Newsweek at the time was coming from advertising. So it's not that the readers would abandon Newsweek; it's the advertisers who abandon it, and therefore, the print edition had to close. We may know that Newsweek was just revived this spring, and interestingly, it's making a comeback by changing completely its model. The new Newsweek, it's making an attempt to get 80% of its revenue from the readers, some subscribers, changing the price of publication, become much more expensive, and the printed edition went down significantly. This is printed in 70,000 copies instead of talking about millions. At its high point, it had 3 million paying subscribers. It is an interesting time for publications. A lot of people talk about print and web, and talking about payment methods, and talking about the changes in journalism. Let's have a look at a few examples of success stories. Monocle has been admired by many. I'm always amazed that people almost unanimously love this publication. For many reasons, it's very compact. It seems to be very dense with information. But I think that what Monocle pioneered and why seems to be so successful is this: that it also introduces content which can be something that looks like this, that you don't really know what it is. Only if you zoom in closely, you'll see that this little thing indicates that it is an editorial. Monocle manages to blur the boundaries between content and advertising, creates this advertorial. Some people call it native advertising, where you mimic the same devices which you use for design, and all the advertising in design in-house. Some of them are very extensive. They can run on 12 pages. And sometimes you don't know what is what. I was going through Monocle trying to understand, what is what. Some pages are clear, but there was 6% of things that I just couldn't make. I just couldn't tell if it was adverts or content. And there are different opinions. Some opinions say like, well, this is really gambling with the trust of readers. You cannot really play this. This becomes unacceptable. And others celebrate it, saying that this is the future of journalism. This is happening in the web. When the advertising content are getting together. I don't know if you've seen this. You probably not. This is coming from the Netherlands. And again, this came out a month after we launched the publication. This is a side of The Correspondent. It's an independent Dutch language online journalism startup. And to my knowledge, it has been the most successful fundraising publication up to date. It raised over €1 million within 2 weeks in the Netherlands. Completely advertising free. Just all the money, all the revenue would come directly from the readers. I think this number might be much higher by now. Very successful. Well, it's early to say because it's been around for a year only. So we'll see what the future will bring. All right, I'll slowly get to our publication, which similarly to this has been funded by crowdfunding. Traditionally, the place where I'm coming from in Holland, we used to be relying on generous subsidies and used to rely on all kind of different support. And now this period is over. It's clear, and we start looking more towards what's happening here. I could not use Kickstarter at the time because Kickstarter is not available in Europe. So we would develop our own crowdfunding site for the project specially. And it's not only about getting the funds to get started. I think the most important step is really to get a readership, because you only make the publication if there's sufficient interest. So it is a proof of concept to see. And secondly, it allows us to answer questions in what form people want to read the publication. People always ask me like, well, why are you making the print edition? And we could basically allow people to vote with their wallets, in what form they want to read it. And we offered the magazine in 3 different editions: in print, in digital, and in the hybrid edition they combined print and digital edition. And this was the results from the campaign, that predominantly 90% of people chose to pay more to get something tangible, which was intuitively I always felt it would be the case. But it's nice to have the numbers to see that people share the same values. And of course it answers that this generation of people, we tend to spend so much time in front of computer, in front of screens, that in our spare time, it's nice. It's really pleasant to read something which is very tangible. I'm not going to get in discussion of print versus digital media, because I think it is slightly silly, to proclaim one being dead and one being alive. I think the best publications getting best out of the two. There are certain things that print is basically better for. There are other things that digital media are superior. You can archive things, you can tag, you can retrieve information very easily, and I think we should be trying to find a combination of the two in order to get the best. We do this, which is I like this slide because it makes 2 things. First, we tag all the content geographically, so we basically see where the stories are taking place. And for example, if you remember a story from, I don't know, Afghanistan, you can just click on that dot in Afghanistan, you'll find it. So you can really, it's an alternative way to look at the content. But also shows the scope that, where magazine looks for its inspiration. It's really, well, I think we avoided Antarctica and Australia, but pretty much, the dots are everywhere. And then the other things, the print is, I'm going to talk about publication which is text heavy, which contains, easily some articles 3, 4, 5,000 words. And, print is good for this kind of reading. Print is good, to show photography in high resolution, which can, present it, in these foldouts. So again, I think it's not one or the other, but it's one and the other. Works that work come obviously with the website. I don't think you can make a publication without the website these days. So all the content is available online, except that it may be behind paywall. Some articles are free, some are not. It comes available in digital format, which means that it's not just PDF but also the ebooks, which support all the formats again. I'm showing this because how do you design these things? When you have the print edition, which does one thing, and then you have the website with different constraints, and then you have all these ebooks with Kindle, with iPads, which has completely different constraints. They may be monochrome, no color, different format proportions, different everything. The only thing which is shared, when we're designing it, we're trying to find something which would be shared across. And there's not many things that you can share. One of the only things which could make it consistent was the typeface. So one of the first things that I did, and I had to do with my background, is that I would design a typeface for the magazine, which became the voice of a magazine. It became something that it's the only thing that connects the print and the digital editions. It's not something that gets in your face right away, but it is something that it's confident, it's subtle, it's out there. But I should talk about content, because that's what matters. A magazine is only as good as its content. And before, I was talking about advertising. I should say that there's nothing wrong with advertising as such. In fact, we do include advertising, but we made internal rules, like we insist that most of the money should come from the readers. In fact, only small fraction of the magazine is, we have 4 pages usually in the magazine which are adverts. I wouldn't mind having 2 more, but okay, let's talk about content. I'll go. The content. Let's look at this. I struggle, or I'm not completely comfortable call this design magazine, because people get slightly wrong ideas when you call something design magazine. We tend to think that design functions versus something next, which is next to something which is not design. We tend to think that there are design objects and then there are other objects, which I don't know what that would be. Then there are design shops, and then there are other shops. There are design museums and other museums. The basic idea, or the basic premise of the magazine is that anything which is man-made includes elements of design. It's simple as this. The magazine has a subtitle, "Magazine of Unexpected Creativity," and again, creativity is overused word, which has different connotations in different places. And again, the basic idea of the magazine is that anyone who takes his work seriously is being creative. If it's a lawyer, if it's a carpenter, people tend to make their own tools, try to improve their lives by making small improvements. And it's often these invisible innovations that are most interesting ones, the ones that are almost anonymous. So I'll show you a few examples what I mean. I spent a bit of time in India working, and so a lot of the content came from these from India and other places. These are dabbawalas. You may be familiar with them. Dabbawalas are mainly working out of Mumbai. Mumbai is the commercial capital, city of 16 million people, and Indian men they like to eat homemade food. It's simple, but how do you get to eat homemade food if you work in a huge city and you need to commute for hours and hours? It's not really possible to really go back for lunch break, and therefore there's a service for this. When the man leaves at 6 in the morning for work, their mothers or wives, loving wives, stay at home and prepare the food. And there are dabbawalas. Dabba means the container. Wala is the person that delivers it. Goes and collects these containers and brings them to the offices of people. And then, when they finish with lunch, they go back and collect them and bring them back to the house. It sounds very simple, except that it's made on a massive scale. It's made on such a scale that hundreds of thousands of dishes are delivered every day. And what is most amazing is that they achieve such a efficiency that only 1 out of 6 million pieces is getting lost. Something that FedEx or UPS cannot match ever. And again, amazingly, these people don't use computers. They're usually illiterate. There are no GPS tracking devices. There's nothing. So the first question is like, how does it work? What kind of logistical operation is it that can achieve these results? So it would be an excuse to go into it, to find out, to follow double-O's, to see how they work, to get really on the ground, and to prepare an article. It's really as simple as this. Or another example, which I like because it inverts what our idea about design may be. This comes from the Netherlands. And it solves, Netherlands, as you know, is one of the most densely populated countries, which comes, again, the different kinds of problems come with this. We tend to think that to solve traffic situations, there's only one solution, and that is to bring traffic regulations, to bring separations between cars and pedestrians and cyclists, to bring more traffic control and traffic lights and traffic signs. And there's an opposite trend coming from the north of the Netherlands, driven by a traffic engineer called Hans Monderman, who pioneered a movement called shared space, which basically does the opposite. It removes all the regulations. It removes the traffic signs. And surprisingly, the result, although it's very counterintuitive, is that it becomes safer. Something that initially may look very chaotic and almost dangerous results that the number of accidents drop dramatically. There are no curbs, there are no separations of any kind. But people know what to do. If you treat people like idiots, they will behave like idiots. If you give them responsibility, they start using it. And for this, for example, situation, there were fatal incidents before. Now it doesn't happen. All the small injuries also disappeared. And again, it would be very easy to measure it before and after situation, talk about it, and report it. People always say like, yeah, but it wouldn't work in other places. It does work. This has been implemented in London, in Germany, in Australia, in different places, and I haven't seen an example where the situation would be worse than before. From the first issue, I wanted to include this. This is you may have seen it. This, when the U.S. troops come to Afghanistan or other places, Iraq, the question is how will they communicate with the local people? And there are devices for this. They use these laminated guides, which are visual translator guides, in order to break these language barriers. They look deceptively simple. They look like South Park cartoons. They really look, but they communicate very complex ideas. Barbara, who is here, wrote this wonderful piece, which again, she managed to speak to all the parties related, to soldiers, to designers of this, to understand what is the process to design something like this. It's really designed by a team of psychologists, linguists, army specialists, and graphic designers to do something like this. You need to be aware that you need to read it from right to left, so you don't get paid for shooting helicopters. You get rewarded for spotting them. And one of my favorite things from the first issue is this. Very simple. It's an interview with Linda Asher, who happens to be here. I'm very pleased to welcome here. And it talks about what is translation. And it was a favorite piece of many designers because they realized the similarities in how content is being transformed to different forms. And in the interview, the basic premise is that translation beyond the linguistic questions is a social interchange. Quite interesting read. I'll talk about other stories. So you see some patterns which reappear, and then I'll talk about a bit of the methods we use. This was the second issue. We do publish it twice a year. Just enough to allow us to prepare it and research the articles thoroughly. In the second issue, I think in the first issue, it's always I think it's the easiest to produce for any magazine. There's always more interest in any pilot publication. There's always interest in new things. And the second issue is always the critical one. It's always that you need to prove how things work. You need to, the novelty is slightly worn out, and it become really a real test. In the second issue, we try to come up with a narrative that the stories connect to each other. That there is one line that flows through the magazine, and although it's written by many different people who may not be aware of how the story participates to the whole, it is important that this narrative was maintained. I'll show a few examples. It starts with Justin has mentioned that in the first issue, we had a story about the fly in the urinal, which is a bit of a social legend in the Netherlands. We come back to the place, which is Amsterdam Airport, Schiphol Airport, and the most popular, the most common plane which is landing there is the jumbo jet, the Boeing 747, and we worked with a writer to talk about the design process. How a plane which was designed in the 60s. And it was never meant to survive. It was meant to, to stay in the market for a few years. How it became the most successful plane ever built. It was originally built as a cargo plane, really. And Boeing didn't really believe in its future because they thought the future was supersonic planes. Somehow it really became, and that's what the story is about, a very successful one. That plane has been designed around the proportions of shipping container. So that's the size of the jumbo jet. So you can fit these 40 feet containers sideways. And this became the subject of the second piece, so the story continues, which talks about this, again, deceptively very simple object, shipping container, which aesthetically, it's not beautiful. It's not something you would discuss. But if you follow the development, if you follow how standardization of containers happened, then you start understanding basically how globalization works, how things are shipped from place to place, and you start seeing again how global economy works. And there are human stories behind them, which are quite fascinating to discover. From there on, we go to alternative to global trade, and that is that starts in this building. We try to look at how trade happens in what we so-called the developing countries. This building is Chungkin Mansions in Hong Kong. Chungkin Mansions is one of the cheapest hostels in Hong Kong. You can stay there for $12 a night, which attracts all kind of traders from all around the world. The person that wrote the piece, Matthew Gordons, who's an anthropologist, he would stay in every single room of the hotel. He would speak to most of the people living there. So again, deep engagement with the subject, trying to understand who comes there, what leaves, what's happening inside the building. The building has a terrible reputation. Most of Hong Kong natives would never enter it, being scared because you see, there are 180 nationalities at any point, being in the building, and there are many Africans, which again, there are many reasons for this. One of the reasons is that there are no visa obligations between Hong Kong and African countries. And these African traders, they come to Hong Kong to buy goods made in China. It's the ideal port of entry. And they bring them, they bring goods of any kind from live fish to mobile phones. And one particular lead which we follow is how mobile phones get from China to Africa, and how they travel in suitcases of individuals. People would come with empty suitcases and load 400 mobile phones inside and travel back and forth between Africa and Hong Kong. And they do it on such a level that 80% of mobile phones in Kenya come from this particular building. 20% of all phones in sub-Saharan Africa come from this one building. There are 20 million phones a year which come through this building, which is incredible. We talk about impact of global economy, and then suddenly you find like really this alternative trading system which can be as efficient as anything else. Chungkin mentions. Because most of the pieces tend to be quite long, we break them out by smaller ones, by photo essays, and in each issue we have a couple of them. This is one of them from the second issue. Very simple things. balls. Kids, it's one universal thing about children is that they love to play, but they don't always have the conditions. They don't always have the ready-made, toys. So the kids in Africa, in rural Africa, they would have to make their own balls, and they make them from anything which is available, from garbage, from scrap, anything, and often they make them out of condoms because that's what is available thanks to all the humanitarian help. These balls don't last very long. They have to make them every day, and we would have this photo series of showing 10 of those balls, photographed by a Belgian photographer who traveled there. Quite a wonderful series. And I'm getting to the current issue, which just came out 2 weeks ago, which is this one. This is a piece about designing mountains, but more than anything, we always had this thing in the top corner. If you've seen the magazine in real life, I don't think anyone noticed it, but we always included this short URL. Let me zoom into it. The short URL, if you type it, you could get the full text. It's basically a way to share the article for friends, so you don't need to photocopy it. To possibly blur the boundaries between print and digital media. But what we did from now on is that, besides getting the English edition, it will also tell you that this article exists in Spanish, and if you click on it, you will get the full Spanish edition. So the Spanish edition is not the printed one; it is a digital edition. We could not afford to print it. It's a really trial to see if there's interest, but this is an inexpensive way to do it. So you get all the texts which are in the magazine are available, but online, and you can combine it. So people would buy the print, and then if their language skills are better in the other language, they could follow it with their phones or with any other device. There is a underlying theme in this issue, and it's an issue of, the theme is how to deal with time. Again, we tend to think that design is something that works for a season or for a limited time, that design is always ephemeral, and we're designing something which is very short-lived. And we try to look at the opposite. We try to look at something which lasts longer than our lifetime. How to design something that you may basically making it for future generations. So we looked at objects, or we looked at situations where we inherit things, or we're making something which will be around for a long time. And one of these projects are these bunkers, which are in Albania. Albania was this, had for a few decades this paranoid regime, which built, 700,000 bunkers for its 3 million people, expecting invasion from east and west. At the end, no one came, but the bunkers stayed there, and people have to deal with this. This is a massive structure. If you look at the amount of material used for it, it's one of the most significant projects worldwide. It's more material has been used in this than building pyramids or the Maginot Line. It's comparable to the Great Wall of China, and these bunkers, they're made to be indestructible, obviously. So they will be there for a few centuries. They will be there maybe for thousands of years, and people have to find a way how to deal with this. Removing them is as costly as building them, so it's not really an option for a country which is not very, very rich. So obviously what happens is that they're being repurposed. And we would send a person, a writer, to Albania to speak to people on the ground, how they're used, how they deal with them, and how to reconcile the past with the present. How when regime changes, but these bunkers stay, how they're being repurposed. But there are even more extreme examples. This piece probably is the longest idea of a time. It is about. It starts with nuclear energy. We invented something. Humans invented something just 70 years ago. We invented nuclear energy. Incredible power suddenly, and something which we haven't really considered is what to do with with its waste. Until now. There's no permanent solution for what to do, how to store the waste from nuclear power plants. This waste is being stored in this what's called a dry cask, which are being cooled in water. But this is a temporary solution, which will we have to. We have to find a permanent one within 100 years before these metal casts will stop functioning. This is an engineering problem. When deep underground repositories are being built, in New Mexico. This one is in Finland, and they're being put as deep as possible. I'm not sure about feet. This would be 700 meters deep underground. It's in the granite walls, and once when it will be ready, it will be ready probably in 50 to 70 years. This will be filled with nuclear waste and then sealed and closed forever. And now, interesting part comes. If you close this, and this will continue being radioactive for 100,000 years, as predicted, how are you going to mark this place, do not entry, for the next 100,000 years? This is not an engineering problem. This is a communication problem. How to communicate this danger for future generations when a language, as you know it, earliest records of written form is 5,000 years old. And suddenly we happen to be in a situation where I need to communicate it for a few times this, for 100,000 years. So it's clear that using written language or using logotypes or pictograms may not be sufficient. And so there are different think tanks coming which thinking about how to identify these places. And we're showing some of the solutions which look like science fiction movies, which using other symbols, archetypal symbols, and again it's a collaboration between architects and linguists and psychologists and larger teams, and it's something that should be solved within this century. These are not those real solutions, but it's a work in progress. It is a nice design brief for any design school to deal with this. And I'm getting to other examples of durability. Consider this temple from 4th century from Japan, or other ones. We're showing a number of these structures. They're all built by one particular company. The company is called Kongo-Gumi. Kongo-Gumi is the oldest corporation in the world. It's a family-run company which exists for 1,400 years, and it would be again a nice excuse to find out how do you run a company for 1,400 years. When again, you make business plans for 5 years and you usually fail. And when in the middle of changes, in the middle of wars and changes of economical and other scales, you have something which has such a continuous run. 86 generations of family members would run this company, and very sadly, this company went bankrupt 3 years ago. And again, also to understand why now. We would again search for a researcher in Japan and a writer, and try to get as close as possible to document it. Again, it's one of the longest stories. I'm not sure, is Shogun here? Yes, very good. We have you seen the magazine? Yeah, we have this story, which is written by another person who's here, which is a very touching one. Again, comes from India. And it has to do with, in India there are several taboos, and menstrual cycle of women is one of them, when it's not generally understood really, and it's really a women's issue. This is about a person, a man, who's trying to make life of his wife easier by, in rural places in India, often, sanitary pads are not available, or they're being too costly. So this person, Arunachalam, which was mentioning by his name, he would spend years to try to make a machine, to try to engineer or to produce sanitary pad out of available material. People thought he would go nuts because he would collect used ones, and during the process, his mother would leave him, his wife would threaten to divorce him, his village would try to kick him out because he thought he would be possessed by evil spirits. And at the end, he would manage, to make the machines which can be used by women in rural India, and produce, very cheaply these pads, which of course improves the hygiene levels. It can, there are many side effects. Improves the level of education, because one of the reasons why girls would drop out from school is, having, it's all related. We would spend a lot of time working on this, and when this issue came out, which is in the last one, I think on the same date there was a BBC story about the same story. Have you seen it? Which was really interesting to see, how the same story is being reported by two different reports. We're not, I don't really mind. We're not competing on being covering the latest. In fact, we have a preference of showing even older stories and just getting it right and being very slow with this. We look for something which has been known, but just finding a very different angle. But because the story came on right at the same time, it'd be interesting to compare. BBC would really focus on the person, on the maker, and would show really the manufacturing process behind it. It would be very accurate. I think our focus was different because we tried to get, to see who it affects. We tried to look at the user really. So we looked really at the women. We tried to see, what impact does it make for these women who live in rural India. It was a lot more complicated to get close to them. There are language barriers. We would have to send a photographer on location. But at the end, I think it was a useful exercise to shift the angle. So not looking at just at the maker, but looking at the effect of the work. I'm not going to recount the whole magazine, but I'll talk about the other thing. I started to talk about financing. The fact that most magazines are being funded by advertising has a side effect, is the fact that the money for the publisher does not need to come from distribution. Distribution, the cover price on the magazines, it's almost irrelevant. It's kind of filtered to get it, to the right target audience. It's not something that needs to, the revenue needs to go back to the reader, which means that, when I did with Stuart Bailey ... magazine, this is all 20 editions, we found out very quickly that, we were very naive about it, but we found out that, in order to sell it, for example, in North America, the distributor would take 86% of the cover price. We would be left with less than 15% of the cover price when we have to pay for, for all the content, all the production. And again, it has to do with the fact that normally the revenue comes from other sources. It does not come from sales of the issues. So it was clear that in order to make a new publication which is reader supported, we would have to probably avoid the traditional cycle of distribution. We'd have to look for alternatives, which is quite easy if you do it low circulation magazine. But if you try to scale it, it becomes quite complicated. And one proposal which I made last year was this. I'll show you.
Works That Work wants to examine often ignored areas of design. In the spirit of this aim, we also intend to bypass traditional distribution networks, which typically take the largest part of the cover price, as well as control where the publication will be sold and at what price. Instead, we would like to deepen our relationships with our readers and make them partners in this enterprise. We call this social distribution. Let's see how it works. A reader based, for example, in Buenos Aires knows a lovely bookstore in his town that could be a good place to sell a magazine. He first contacts the bookstore, and if they're interested, he then contacts us. The next time he or one of his friends travels to one of our magazine hubs, he buys copies of the magazine at a 50% discount. He in turn sells the magazines to the bookstore at 60 to 75% of the cover price, so the reader's profit is 10 to 25% of the cover price. He sends information about the store to us, and we publish it on our website, driving other potential readers to the store. This distribution process supports local bookstores, involves readers as partners and agents of the magazine, ensures that all the parties get paid, and frees us up to focus on what we do best: publishing the magazine.
At the time, this has been obviously a conceptual proposal. It was never clear if this could work in practice. So I was very pleased to see that it has worked. And on our website, we list the bookstores or places. They're not necessarily bookstores. They can be cafes and schools and all kind of strange places which stock the magazine. One thing which I didn't expect, is that like we sold, well, we distributed the magazine a lot in places which would traditionally be avoided or ignored by traditional distribution. We sold magazines in South America, in Russia, in places that I know for a fact that normally wouldn't, the magazine would not get there. And people would ask me often, well, do these magazines need to go to the store? Can I just distribute them amongst my group of peers and friends? It's like, well, great. So you're finding the most direct route, between publisher and reader. That in fact, in many cases, it bypasses the store completely. And these people would not do it really to make profit, but it would just make it more accessible, more affordable for for certain readers. We sold hundreds of copies in Brazil, for example, in this way, where a magazine would be again simply a lot more affordable, because we would sell it at half price. This is the normal or discount which we give to distributors, and now we give it to readers directly. And people would just meet, informally in cafes or their homes, and form these reader clubs where we just distribute the magazines. And thankfully, we have quite a few of those in Spain, in South America, in other places. But the best thing about these events is that there's a really immediate, direct connection between readers and the makers, and there's we're blurring this separation, these boundaries, and a lot of the people who read the magazine became the contributors as well. The magazine attracts obviously people who are similarly curious about it, and the magazine it's getting better because the more people read it, because they also submit ideas, and we benefit from this. So word is being spread about the magazine, and more contributions. Like we have, I'm so happy with contributions from this place, from these schools. They bring it to the places. So again, there's a power in in numbers. When we have more numbers and more people. One of the recent things which we did is that to get it to these places where again to save on shipping costs, we have this traveling database on the website where people who just travel for business, they just report where they go, at what time, and how much room they have available in their luggage, and we use this, we can find very inexpensive ways to get it to different places. We cannot use all of these trips, but about a third of those we do use. We just find coincidental matches of where it needs to go and who's willing to go to take it there. And many interesting things happen. New friendships are born, and people report, meeting interesting people, and stories also born this way, which getting back to the and feed the magazine. I think it is my last slide. Thank you for your attention.
Justin, you go here. I'm just going to put the lights on a bit. Okay, and just to let our friends know, if you're still hanging in there in the simulcast room, there's about 7 seats free in here. First 7 in, can grab them. Just to let you know. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. I feel really inspired, don't you?
Yeah.
Why don't you fire over questions?
Oh, okay.
And you need this.
Oh, you don't?
Yeah.
You can
No.
have.
Okay, yeah. I guess my first question is, what do you look for in a good article to publish in your magazine, I guess?
Could I add to that just a little bit while you're thinking? Are you, are you the editor as well as the publisher? Yeah, so from that perspective.
No, the magazine is made by a very small team.
Yeah.
I could talk about this, but it's a difficult question because we try to, most articles include element of surprise, which by itself makes it very difficult to define what what that surprise might be. We often look at familiar, and trying to find the unfamiliar way to discuss it. Something that you may know already, but find a way how it may, form of article changes your perception about something that you know. Again, we don't look at recency as a criterion. Relevancy is a lot more important. We try to look at as I mentioned, at the user, how it affects our lives, which is very important. So it is, we're looking at these human inventions which are not theoretical, they're very practical cases, and finding a way to document them. And using fairly straightforward, simple language. In the writing, we try to avoid footnotes, we try to avoid like anything, and looking for a certain narrative, really personal story, to make it very accessible. So I think the form of writing and accessibility is, probably also the biggest difference between a magazine like ... and this, which was a lot more esoteric and a lot more, there was a high barrier of like how to read it, and now. Right, and this, I hope that this can be read by a wide audience. And I always meet people who are not, nurses and engineer who write and write how much they enjoy the magazine. So maybe he's doing it.
Well, the other side of that coin is, I guess, we're thinking of it. It's exciting that it's not about design. It is about design, but it's not labelled as such. But it does seem incredibly all-encompassing. So, what wouldn't make a cut? What we wouldn't include?
Yeah. Well, we wouldn't include, just beautiful pictures of nature. We wouldn't include just beautiful pictures of people.
No, but I mean in terms of articles.
Yeah, in articles.
For example, the one about the building where with all the different nationalities staying in it. It's an fascinating human interest story.
Right. The invisible things was, in the same way, how looking at translation as an invisible process of transformation, looking at, the logistics has been always very interesting. And, we try to learn, from the Dabawalas, from the distribution, to how to distribute the magazine itself. We take a lot of inspiration of, how we operate is exactly in line in what we write about. So the workflows, it's something that we use in our production, that in our distribution, and it is one interest that we do. I think we'll continue writing about these business models. For example, we may have an article about drug cartels in Colombia, and as a business case study.
That's definitely a good business model idea.
Why do you think that the subjects and areas that your magazine looks at is traditionally not covered in other magazines?
Well, I don't know. It's not a question to me, but often the traditional look at design is looking at the surface, looking at the aesthetical point of view, and some of these results, some of these cases may not be living up to expectations of maybe what you call traditional design. They're not beautiful enough to be shown, and so maybe, but I wouldn't know. We have to ask other magazines why.
Well, I mean, one of the ways, you're speaking about this deep engagement with the subject matter. It just looks too good to be true, almost, these sort of situations. And you've talked about valuing the reader and this kind of relationship with the reader. What about valuing the writer? And how does that work? I mean, you talked once about sending someone somewhere. These are things that are unheard of in publishing at the moment. So could you talk a little bit about that setup and how important the reader is in your pie charts?
The writer. Well, one of the most obvious way how we value the writer is that we do pay them. Okay. So that's so we make a point that all contributors get paid. Of course, we operate on a tiniest budget. It's also clear. It's not a profitable venture. That's also clear, and that's why we try to look mainly for people on location. So avoiding paying crazy traveling fee, and so far we've been very fortunate about finding the right people who are close to subjects to do it. The person who wrote the Albania story, it was a Reuters reporter who lived in the region, and was willing to do this. We actually did pay her because she was based in Kosovo and she would have to go to Albania, but it would be an inexpensive trip to make. Often, the photographer in India, we would have to pay for the trip, but it would not be crazy expensive. So I think it's getting the right people is part of the story, and I think we are quite fortunate now that we're making it also when it is more easy to find the people. There's one journalistic startup that we work and collaborate which is called pitchme.org, and it is it's grouping writers which live on different locations. And so if you're looking for if you have a topic we need to cover, we're looking at who may be relevant for this. So when we had a story from Japan, we considered 3 different people, and we would see who may be the right person for this.
Yeah, I just think it's part of the project of re-educating people about magazines. You're doing it brilliantly with this distribution. You have your readership, but it's also part, perhaps I'm putting unfair responsibility on you to do this, but, to re-educate people about the value of good writing and content, and, being part of that discussion, I think, in these readers' clubs. It's expensive. It should be expensive.
It is. People, there's always complaint that this magazine is not cheap. And it has a high cover price. It is. I think it's sold normally for $20, which is a lot more than you probably used to. And there are reasons for it. Again, that in order to make it, that's the only way how we can do it.
No, I totally agree. I just mean that also the sort of the mechanics of writing should be exposed more, and people need to learn about what a 6,000 word piece with that level of research that you're talking about costs.
Yes. And it's an obvious thing. I mean, we're trying to make it, what seems right. It's almost a trivial thing, but there have been many changes. We get sometimes requests for republishing our pieces, and it was always amazing that big media corporations with millions of readers would just pay us in exposure, saying you'll see millions of people see it. We cannot pay you for this. And then there's really small outlets who would offer a republication fee. So there's a strange shift in how what is being valued and what numbers are being valued more than content.
Well, I trust in you.
Works that Works has a lot of stories and design in developing countries, and I mean your magazine is also now offered in another language besides English. Do you think that a lot of coverage in design right now is focused on the West, I guess?
We have to say we're quite careful about balancing it. I think there's the same number of stories coming from with so-called developed world as the developing world. It's really a mix, and we try to find the balance, because otherwise it becomes this magazine out something else than where we are based. And it's trying to make no distinction between those two. It's not treating it differently than anything else. The Spanish edition, well, I don't know how this is going to work out, but it was made because there's been natural interest. We somehow were selling quite a lot of copies in South America, but also in Spain. And I don't know why. I was just speculating yesterday with someone why in Spain compared to other countries. And one of the possible reasons that the economic crisis in Spain, maybe forces people to be more active. There were a lot of young people, recent graduates who would, starting these readers clubs, and making little profit with this, and finding little retailing places. But yeah, the mix of articles comes from all over the place, not just.
I love the idea of those readers clubs. Well, I have one more. Sorry, I'm hogging it. So I find this very exciting. I find the title rather enigmatic, and the works that work thing, probably on purpose. But also the way in which it kind of sits really uneasily with the idea of unexpected creativity. I don't know, there's a lot going on in there. Can you just talk to us about what you're thinking there, and if you're thinking about evolving that as the magazine evolves? That was your starting point.
Well, I'm hoping that as the magazine evolves, the name becomes just a name. That you don't think about it too much. When we started we start hating the name so much that it's a completely different story I could talk about. But at one point, it just becomes really just this mantra that you repeat, and you stop thinking about the meaning. I think something similar may happen. It's like any name that you don't think about the real person's the significance of the name. What I noticed that there's a trend, the trend in naming publications. They sound like rock and roll songs. It's really. It was almost too easy to find a catchy name which sounds interesting, but you don't really know what it means. And I was trying to avoid this. That's something that's purple elephant, or something that you combine two random words and it sounds really good. It sounds like a song, or you just take a I don't like it. You take a menu from a restaurant, combine two different dishes, have a magazine title, like these kind of things that. So trying to be I knew that what kind of language the magazine would be using, and again this accessibility, this like not trying to be too clever with this, is embedded in the title, just like being very to the point, very direct. And I agree that it's it's a difficult title, but I'm hoping that may.
It allows for interpretation. Well, let's get some other views. It's so great, I think, that we have some writers and contributors and readers in the audience here. It feels like the magazine is becoming three-dimensional. It's great. So let's hear. Bertie's first.
Hi, I'm Miriam. It seems like one of the most innovative factors of Works at Work is your social distribution model. How do you see publishing progressing if more people kind of adopt your method?
I've been asked by other publications if they could use this, and I was like, well, please feel free. I don't think it may work for many magazines, for several reasons. First, that this magazine has been designed to be very light, very portable. It has been factored into it. We thought about it from the very beginning. If you make something which weighs 2 pounds and it's really very big, it makes it very difficult to transport 20 copies. It's simple as this. Secondly, the magazine talks about these distribution schemes and talks about these invisible networks. There's a connection between readers. So I think it works quite well for us because we're dealing with these subjects. We operate exactly in the same way what we write about, and which may be different for other publications. So it's not easy to adopt. And also the last thing, it's not really scalable. So if you're running a magazine of which has circulation of 100,000, it will be very difficult to operate it on the same way. We have edition of 3,500, so it's a lot easier to control. And still, most of the our income revenue comes from direct subscription, not from the social distribution. Why the social distribution was important is that it allows us to reach a different public, which normally we don't reach by online sales. Online sales reaches people who know it, and they're comfortable, and they find it, and they come back. I mean, it's great. It's the best way because we get the full price. But this kind of networks of friends is important because it can grow a little bit more. You said print run. Yeah. Again, I'll compare it to the previous publication which we made, which was ... and which was, we decided to make a magazine, and we had no idea like how many to print. Do you print 100 or 1,000 or 100,000? It was, we got some money from a grant, and you don't know where to start. And it was almost not important because we got the money already, and it was not important to reach anyone. It was a very different case. If the magazine stayed in our studio, it would not make much difference. It would, we would just make another issue, and again the money would come from the same source again. And Holland, this time it was very different, and the crowdfunding of course made it a lot easier. We would have some numbers already, and we basically pre-sold half edition, and we printed twice as many. So we pre-sold 1,500 copies, and I make a bet that we should print twice as many that it may sell. The first issue is completely sold out, so it was quite accurate to But again, this allowed this accuracy, and with the second issue, I knew that again from the previous experience that it may be a small dip. We printed the same number. We still have copies left of the second issue. And with the third issue, we printed a little bit more, so it's 3,500. So the print run is kind of, we print as many as we can distribute. I cannot stock them in, I have a small office, so we print as many as we can sell. And we can get a pretty good idea based on number of subscribers and based on, these readers clubs. So we can kind of make estimations how many to print. And I'd love, if it grows, because it's the only way to sustain it, of course. In fact, we need to grow to about 5,000 to make it really viable. I make a point that we do pay everyone. I'm the only exception. I don't get paid for doing it. So and increasing the print run would allow make it truly viable, and so I can spend more time with this as well.
Yeah, that's Susan.
I'd love to hear more about your typeface design. Did you design one or more typefaces exclusively for this publication? And what were some of the qualities you were trying to accomplish?
Well, I've designed many fonts before because there's a Type Foundry, which is basically my core business, or something that allows making the publication. So I know a few things about designing fonts, and I'm making it for other publications. But this time, one of the when I was starting and I was trying to make arguments why making a magazine, and there was a real possibility that it would fail. That it will not find readers, it will fold out, it will fold, and it will not continue. And one of the backup plan was like, well, at least it will be kind of a real kind of test of like a public fonts. It will be inspiration for us to make new fonts. And so I made it was clear if I'm running a Type Foundry that I should make an effort to try to make something. And I realized it was a very different exercise when you're making it for a very specific purpose. The process was much faster because normally if you're making it something just for generic use and you don't know who's going to use it in what context, it's very difficult to test it. What language and what size. And here, the size was pretty much given of the format of the magazine. It's the most economic format that you can print in the Netherlands. This indicates like a column width. This indicates the text size. And from all these parameters, and because I knew that we will be dealing with longer articles, you get some formal attributes of a typeface you're looking for. A typeface for continuous text use. And I should mention that I'm not the designer of the publication. I'm working with two other designers, Kai Bernau and Susanna Carvalho, also based in The Hague. So I spoke to them, and I knew, they're very rigorous in the design. They're trying to use very minimal means. So it was clear that it won't be fireworks of many different styles and fonts. It will be pretty much one typeface or two. So we're trying to find like this really working horse, that can do the job, that doesn't seek attention but is really confident and easy to read. And that's what was the brief for the typeface. And it was really pleasure to work on, and very fast. I think that was the fastest project I made, because you know so much about the end use. And of course the exceptions. In the second issue we use another font, and a third one I was looking for a sans version companion, for the captions and for the pull-out quotes. And I thought about designing a new font for this, and at the end, Kai, the designer of the magazine, he showed me what he worked on, his own typeface, and we use this, and we're going to publish it very soon. So it will be again like the two interests get together, a Type Foundry and a magazine. Although, well, it's not trying to be like I met the emigre people, and Rudy came to me like, how come you're not talking more about type? And I said, well, it's not, it's not trying to use it as a device to promote fonts. It is, putting them in practice, but we're not kind of talking about fonts because they're different stories. So it's a real life use. But he was very surprised. He thought it didn't make any sense.
Well, maybe that's why you're in business and they want to know.
It seems like you spend a lot of time thinking out the subscription models and distribution models for work that work. But when it comes to the advertising, the solution was like, well, let's just put as little in as possible. And I'm wondering if, I actually kind of like Dot's approach to advertising, how they handled it. And I'm just wondering if you kind of spent any time developing or thinking about alternate advertising structures for works that work, as you did with like the novel solutions with distribution.
Well, I'll just mention that in we try to blend these advertising in, and so to get like-minded people who would allow us to redesign their ads. and we'd have this very simple, people could just specify a color, and there would be text in one typeface used, and we had different variations on the model. What I wanted to do this time was really a complete separation. So there are ads at the end, and we not work with them. Some people said like, it would be really nice if you do something like monocle, that the ads look really nice and they are more integrated in the magazine. We make a point that they are very different, and you can identify. They are not. It's not the content. It's really separate. And if you start designing them, it's a dangerous field. That is, how far you can go with designing them to suit the needs of advertisers. So decision was to really leave it alone, and it's just put at the end of the magazine. Simple as this. I wish I could be choosing them. It's a new publication. It's been around a very, very short time. It's a small circulation, so there are not that many options. Ideally, I spoke to a few people that would make perfect sense. Like a small scale manufacturer. There are a few people that I spoke to that it might make sense to place advertising. I think in the current issue we have one college for creative studies, and they thought that this was a good audience for them. We have a software developer who thought that maybe it makes sense. So it's a mix. Somehow they tend to be people I know, so it almost feels like a favor they're doing rather than real business. I think that again, because we have very few ones, they get to be seen, and so they may be functioning because they're not surrounded by hundreds of other ads, so they are highly visible. So I think they have the value, but we're not. Well, I think if some major corporation there would be, maybe we would be picky about it. We would maybe consider like what is suitable or not. But this hasn't been an issue. Like we're not overwhelmed by response of advertisers. The social media was quite important, and luckily, again, the Type Foundry has a number of followers, so we're not starting from really zero. So we could use the backbone of what we had already, which also meant that the first readers were from Design Circle. And the difficult part is also how to enlarge that circle, how to make it accessible to others. And that is still not resolved. That's why we're using this different distribution systems to find other people that who wouldn't know about them. And that's why we were, and I was very active. The first year traveling with the magazine a lot. So every time I'm invited somewhere to talk about my other work, I always bring the magazines as well to talk about this as well. And last year we had, I think close to 20 different events, presentations, reader meetings, so doing really live meetings with people and being very honest about it. So we also write about it. We're being super transparent also about anything which has to do with magazine, about production, about financing, about how readers are involved with this. We break down the costs, and so by communicating with people that we think may be the audience.
Yeah, I guess what does a magazine represent for you in this day and age? And will we see work go into other kinds of media as well? Or is this going to be print?
Like television?
Videos, podcasts?
No. I could imagine using video on our website more extensively, but at the moment it's just not realistic. We would just not be able to maintain it. Once you started it, you have to do it on a longer term. And we played with the idea of having some things which are easier to present on video, to work with more with video. I think it could work really well, but again, the magazine will have to grow a little bit to allow for this, because it's more costly to develop as well. So yeah, it would be
but
nice.
also you were asking about what the magazine means to you.
like the role
Yeah.
of it.
Is it just a means of conveying information? Because it seems like your magazine is also a way for communities to get together as well.
Well, the magazine is doing several things. Well, traditionally for publishers, it's a business. For us, it's not yet a business, so it has to be something else. I had very personal motivations to do it. You know, like, it's making my design practice a lot more lively, a lot more interesting. I think anyone who's been working for a longer time, you know, I had my company for 15 years. You know that there's a lot of repetition. There's a lot of, you know, like you become this expert that you know something and you keep repeating what you've done. And this allows for bringing a lot more new things that I never dealt with, and it brings me to, you know, a situation of being a student. You know, like, that you're learning new things along with the magazine, which I value very much. You know, like, it's one of the best things that I get to meet very interesting people, and I learn a lot of new things. And again, if you think of at what time of your life you really kind of were most excited about things, it's often when you're a student, when you didn't know how to make things. And this puts me to this situation when I deal with this, that I don't know how to do it. You know, like I pretend that I know something about distribution. I have no idea. Like, we're trying things out. We're working with subjects that I'd never dealt with. I don't know how to cover them. You know, being desperate about like how to find an appropriate angle about some certain subjects. We don't know. You know, it's really starting from zero always. And but that's, you know, the exciting part, you know, starting from zero.
Well, I think we should now inaugurate the secret branch of the Works at Work Readers Club in the next room over some wine and cheese, and a great chance, I think, for the writers of the magazine, the readers of the magazine, the maker of the magazine, and fans of the magazine to all chat together. But before we do, let's join us in thanking once again. Do you want to mention?
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot an important point.
Yeah, the magazine is also on sale. 50% off, $10, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And you get a free glass of wine with it. Thanks.